Hi, this is Will Fontenot with Fontenot Spevak, and today we're going to talk about the three-step process that a court is going to use to determine what the appropriate alimony amount is that can be awarded in your case. So let's look at the case of Fox v. Fox. This is a Court of Appeals decision out of the 5th District Court in St. George, Judge Matthew Bell. This is 2022 Utah App 88, and if you want to just plug that into Google, just type in Fox v. Fox 2022 Utah App 88, and you'll be able to read this case for yourself. These cases are all available to the general public. All right, this was a case concerning alimony. This was a 2-day divorce trial. The main issue in this case was that when the parties were married, they had a very high standard of living. In fact, the court called it a lavish lifestyle here. And the problem that the appellant had, which was Deanne, the wife in this situation who was making the claim for alimony, she was challenging the alimony award because the court did not make a specific finding as to what the standard of living was during the marriage. She filed a financial declaration with the trial court, and in that declaration, she claimed $32,577.24 in monthly expenses. So you need to understand that in any alimony case, this financial declaration that you file with the court is going to be an extremely important document. It's got an individual section, and then it's got a marital standard of living section. And then that marital standard of living section is going to be very important because that's where you're going to be able to at least make your argument to the court as to what the total standard of living was during the marriage prior to separation. And it is true that in alimony cases, the statute says that the court should take into account the standard of living that existed prior to separation, but the court can, as long as it makes adequate findings of fact, supporting the decision, it can value the standard of living at the time of divorce as opposed to the time of separation, which can be a very important thing that you may want the court to do, either the time of separation or the time of divorce, depending upon whether there's been changes that have occurred in between that period of time. But the general rule is that the court is going to value the standard of living that exists prior to separation, leading up to separation. So in this case, the husband was ordered to pay the wife $15,000 per month in alimony for a period of 2 years, and then the court took it down to about $13,000 per month for another 22 years, or unless it terminated earlier. Alimony always terminates upon the death of either party or the remarriage or cohabitation of the recipient spouse. All right, let's scroll down to, there were a lot of other issues that were appealed in this case. We're not going to talk about those things. One of the other issues was the wife's claim that the husband was voluntarily underemployed because he changed jobs and took a lower paying job. And she was trying to argue that he was voluntarily underemployed. And we'll talk about that concept in another video. Right now, we're just going to talk about the 3-step process that the court is going to use to determine what the appropriate alimony amount is that the court should award. Alimony is not limited to providing for only basic needs, but should be fashioned in consideration of the recipient spouse's station in life in light of the parties' customary or proper status or circumstances, with the goal of being an alimony award calculated to approximate the parties' standard of living during the marriage as closely as possible. So this can be a really contentious part of a case. It's been contentious in other cases that I've handled. What really was the standard of living? How do you calculate it? Is it really just an exercise of going through everything that the parties were spending on a monthly basis during the marriage, or is it something different than that? So her point of appeal here was that the court erred by not starting its analysis by making a separate finding regarding the parties' marital standard of living and by not taking that standard of living sufficiently into account. She was arguing that the standard of living was much higher than just that $32,000, that it was something like $70,000. Yeah, here it is. Deanne points to her own expert's analysis that the parties were spending on average more than $70,000 per month during the marriage and asserts that the court should have concluded that she is entitled to half that amount in alimony, at least as long as Ben is able to pay it. The court did not take that approach. What the court did is just looked at her financial declaration. A court appropriately takes that standard of living into account by assessing the needs of the parties in light of the marital standard of living. The ceiling on a recipient spouse's alimony award is represented by that spouse's needs viewed in light of the marital standard of living. So that is really going to be the cap that a court is ever going to award, are the needs of the recipient spouse. It has to be related to the standard of living that existed during the marriage, either prior to separation or at the time of trial, depending upon which one of those the court thinks is most appropriate. So what the court did here, the trial court made 23 separate line item findings regarding Deanne's reasonable monthly expenses using her requested amounts as a starting point, and it adjusted 4 of the line items downward and 3 of them upward. The court determined that Deanne's reasonable monthly needs as adjusted amounted to $25,424.61. And again, Deanne really didn't have a problem with the findings that the court made. Deanne's problem was just over the approach. And of course, the court just finding that the standard of living based on her need was $25,000 as opposed to making a separate finding of $70,000. I mean, if her financial declaration says that $25,000 are her expenses, then that's what the court is going to award her. The court's not going to award her more than what her stated need is in the financial declaration. The court then subtracted her income and the child support payments from her needs and determined that Deanne would have a monthly shortfall of $15,000 per month for the first 2 years, which would narrow to $13,000 per month after that. So this is the income section of the analysis. The first step is going over the need based on what's stated in the financial declaration. And then we go to income. And this is interesting here because what you do is you take the income and then you actually add to that what her child support payments are. That's her income. And then of course you would subtract from that her monthly need. And then that would be the need as determined by her ability to satisfy some of her need. And the court found that the shortfall would just be the $15,000 because the child support amount was rather high in this case. In this case, the court was not required to make any specific finding regarding how much total money the parties spent each month during the marriage, and it was certainly not required to presumptively award Deanne half of any such amount as alimony. In short, we perceive no abuse of discretion in the manner in which the court assessed Deanne's needs or in which it took into account the parties' marital standard of living, and on that basis, we reject Deanne's first challenge to the alimony award. So this case is really informative and important because when you put on your financial declaration, if you're the recipient spouse, you're claiming alimony, the court isn't just going to look at what the standard of living is and award you half of that. The court is going to look at what you've actually claimed your need is. And then, of course, the need has to be reasonably related to what you spent during the marriage. That all has to check out. It has to be proven. If you overstate it, the court is going to figure that out and the court is going to reduce those things. So that's the way the court's going to go about making a calculation for alimony purposes. If you have an alimony case that you need a lawyer's help with, please give us a call, 801-312-9330, Fontenot Spevak. We serve Salt Lake County, we serve Davis County, and we serve Weber County as well. So give us a call. You can set up a free consult at that line.